Hey guys, Meteorologist Chris Tomer here on this Monday. Let's talk some mountain weather. And where is the moisture? Well, it's right here, as expected, targeting the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, parts of BC, Alberta, Idaho, and Montana. Now, it doesn't look that heavy right now to me, and the snow levels are going to be quite high. But over the next 24 to 48 hours, I do think the intensity is going to pick up on this. And as we head towards the 5th, this axis is going to move down into California and begin to affect the High Sierra with some high altitude snow. So it'll shift to the south a little bit across the west. Let's go to water vapor satellite imagery, point out the key features here. So this is up in the mid levels of the atmosphere. Your moisture is in the whites and the blues. Interesting little feature right here, a tiny little area of spin and a low pressure that came off the Pacific. But I'll tell you, there's nothing to this. You saw radar. There's no precip with this. It looks like there's just some mid-level moisture in the water vapor, but so that's nothing to worry about. We'll X that out. But this is the real game right here. That's where your weather is. That's the area of low pressure. That's where the jet stream is steering the moisture up into the Pacific Northwest. Again, in the coming days, this will start to collapse to the south and affect a lot of California. All right, here are my bullet points. So we talked about the flow right now, favoring the Pacific Northwest, BC Northern Tier, but eventually it begins to buckle to the south and it hit California, 11.5. The snow level is going to be high, and this precludes a lot of Tahoe at over 9,000 feet. So you're going to have to be very, very high up to get this snow, and the winds are going to they're going to howl, 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts for sure up there. So it'll be snowing and blowing over the very highest peaks. Here are your key dates. So these are the best odds of snow for Colorado, Tahoe, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and interior BC. So for example, we talked about Tahoe. Your next chance, 11.5 of snow, high elevation. And then another chance, 11.12 and 11.13. Now, unfortunately, we are stuck in this dry lull in Colorado. Tiny bit of snow, 11.6. Tiny bit of snow, 11.8. A bit more as we kind of get later into the period and the flow turns more active, but it is truly a waiting game for a lot of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. A real dry period. So those are all the key dates. Let me drill down just a little bit. A few locations. So Alta, 1 inch, late 11.5 and 11.6. Under an inch, 11.7, and then your biggest potential accumulation is right there, 11, 13, 14, with maybe up to a foot. Snow mass, it is a waiting game. I mean, just paltry amounts. A 2 to 4, 11, 12, 11, 13, 3 to 6, 14, 15. Pretty good conditions here. Once we get into, for central Idaho, once we kind of get into this later period, there's a pretty big snow right there on 11.5, 11.7. So we've got some decent snow coming there. Baker, look at this. A 60-incher coming 11.10 through 11.16. That looks to be a very active period. Fitzsimmons Range, very similar. A 60-incher coming in the same period there. Mount Begbie up there in interior BC. You've got some decent snow, 11.5, 11.7, and then potentially a very big period, 11.10 through 11.16 on Hood. The numbers, they start to tick up a little bit, 11.5, 11.7, and then later in the period as well. All right, let's look at the forecast radar. So we'll start this off at lunchtime today, November 3rd. Again, your primary precip is directed into the Pacific Northwest. All right, let's move ahead. All right, there's your dinner hour today. And notice some of the precip beginning to buckle to the south into central Idaho and even southwest Montana. Northern California. All right, this is probably 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, and look at where the axis of precip has shifted. So now we're talking about some snow over the Tetons, the rest of Idaho, and potentially up there in extreme northern California and the rest of Oregon. So there's the lunch hour on Tuesday, dinner hour, and here we are. This is probably 5 a.m. on Wednesday. And look at this. The directed flow is now towards the Tahoe area and the rest of the High Sierra. And that's some pretty heavy precip. You could see it here in the yellows on the scale. So good to see that. So that leading edge will continue to affect that area. All right, here's the lunch hour on Wednesday. The rest of Tahoe and the Sierra getting hit. All right, there's the dinner hour on Wednesday. And look at that, a little bit of precip affecting right there the northern mountains of Utah, the Wasatch potentially, and the rest of the Tetons, another little wave. All right, here's, this is probably 5 o'clock in the morning or so on Thursday. Still some leftover snow over the Tetons and parts of the Wasatch and the high Uintas. All right, let's move into the middle of the atmosphere. These are atmospheric pressure anomalies, so this is how you spot areas of lower or higher than normal area atmospheric pressure areas. So highs and lows essentially on this map, and this is effective today. So when you look at the pattern for today, it is just a big area of high pressure, and your actions up there in the Pacific Northwest as we've been talking about. All right, moving down the road, this is 11/6. So on Thursday, you can see the drop in pressures right here with potentially an area of low pressure there, and maybe another one hanging back. So that's the precip that's going to affect the Tetons, the rest of Idaho, potentially brushing northern Utah with some snow. And the final map I take us way out. This is 11/17. So once we get past probably 11/10, things definitely turn more active across the west. And this is certain. I mean, this would be a massive pressure drop across the west if this verifies. I mean, we're talking about much colder air for the west. California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Wyoming, Idaho, everybody's included. If this happens, we're talking about widespread snow. So that's something to keep your eye on way down the road in the forecast. Here's total precip. This is as if everything fell as rain. This is a 10-day rolling accumulation, so a total precipitation forecast. The one thing I want you to notice is the axis. So most of the heavy, the lion's share of precip is north of that axis. So you're talking about central to northern California, the Tetons up into Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, BC. There's not a lot south of that. There's really not a lot in Utah. There's not a lot in Colorado. So it's kind of north of that line. Now, looking at the snowfall forecast, same area, 10-day snow forecast, 10-to-1 ratio, you can still see that axis in place. Most of it is north of that. Tetons, Montana, Idaho, a little bit in the Sierra at the higher elevations, a little bit in Oregon, of course, Washington for sure. I mean, in some of these cases up here at higher elevations, we're talking about feet of accumulation. Interior BC looks pretty good there late in the period as well. Idaho does well. But again, there's just not a lot in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. All right, let's take a trip up to the northeast. So yeah, it comes in waves. You can kind of see it there accumulating. 10-day snow forecast. There's even a little bit that rotates down across the Great Lakes in Ohio. You see that right there? That's kind of interesting. 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves, 4 waves potentially there in the northeast. So let's hone in on that. Here's Mount Washington, snow forecast, the snow plume here. So this generates over a foot on the ensemble mean here. And that's by November 18th. You're looking at over a foot on top of Mount Washington. You can see it definitely comes in waves. There's another one, a little one there, and another one there. So possibly 4 different waves. Going up the road to Jay Peak, Vermont, not quite as much as Mount Washington, but still we could see over 8 inches, almost 9 inches of snow accumulation up there on Jay Peak in Vermont by November 18th. And you can see there's a pretty good little wave there, another one there, and then there. Let's go back out west. Jackson, Wyoming, looking at about 11 inches here on the ensemble mean by November 18th. And it's the early period that's going to be rough. I mean, there's a big dry lull right here through probably the 5th. And then we start to see a little bit of snow accumulate over time through November 18th. That beginning period is rough, and that's really the case. Kind of a sad snow forecast here for Berthoud Pass in Colorado. I mean, honestly, when you look at the forecast all the way out through probably November 10th, 11th, 12th, there's hardly anything. there's not much there. This is really the active period. Once we get to November 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and some of the air bars are over a foot up here once we get to that period. So there's definitely some uncertainty there, but I mean it is a really dry forecast for parts of Utah and Colorado. Unfortunately, it's going to take a while. So yeah, that's going to do it for this mountain weather update. Guys, I really appreciate you tuning in here. I hope you have a great day. Take care.